Okay, shading on the cylinder. This is part 5 of our series. Make sure that you have a paper towel that you're going to use to protect your drawing. At this point, it's going to just undo all of the work that you've done if you're not using something to protect it as you shade. Otherwise, you'll be smearing it as you work. I also have multiple blending tools that may be a little bit dirty, a lot dirty, but I can refold and have a clean point. So you really do need to have a clean one, but you may want some of these dirty ones because you can actually shade with them. All right, so this is the area that I've been continuing to shade a little bit off camera, but I want to do some of that on camera as well. So I am going over areas that I have done with maybe a blending tool and or my graphite stick and or even my charcoal a little bit. I want to make sure that those smoother areas also have some pencil touch on them so that we will have an even kind of mark making. So you don't want necessarily everything being super blended either. You kind of need a little bit of grit in your drawing. So probably a medium tool might be a good one for this, a medium pencil. So connecting these darker areas. And if you need to, you might switch pencils at this point. Switch to a dark one to get this dark part of the shadow. So part of the rubric is using a full range of value. So you may not get there all at once. We're often overlapping. So make sure as you do this, you're not making marks that are too long. So we want to stay with that 1/8 of an inch size. And I am using a dirty tool here as I blend things together. Using a dark pencil at this point, my 6B. Trying to get that really dark area here. Small marks. So I am overlapping multiple layers and even different materials as I'm doing this. Moving in between pencils as I get to this area that we want to have the reflected light out here. So switching to some lighter pencils. Switching directions when I need to approach that very edge, making sure things are connected. And again, as I get to this area where I'm moving from my darkest dark to my medium dark, then I may be switching pencils, switching materials to a 4B or a 2B. So layering materials here is helping me get the look I want and be able to go a little bit more quickly than I might have otherwise. But just just using the graphite stick here wasn't going to work. Just using the charcoal, not going to work. But those might have helped me speed this part up a little bit. Or not. You don't have to use those at all. So even as I'm working kind of quickly in these areas, I'm still using these very, very small marks. I'm using one of my medium dark. So depending on how hard you press, I'm actually getting away with using a 4B right now, but you might want a 2B here. So this is why you have to have all your pencils out so you can easily switch between them. So this can be a very calming part of the process. And again, make sure you've got your pointed eraser on hand. Fix any mistakes as they happen. So that definitely means that you're basically drawing with that eraser. That can even include making those almost like hatching marks when you need to. Starting to switch over now to a 2B or an HB as we get to this light part of the drawing. So medium to medium light to very light. So notice how I'm going back into areas that I've done because I need to connect them, make sure that we have a bit of these curving side-to-side marks to help reinforce the form. All right, so again, I'm going to pause, do some of this off camera. Okay, so as I'm getting toward this area where I want the bright highlight, I am making sure to get kind of this uneven edge as it's fading to white. So I'm kind of shading slash mark making slash blending with my blending tool like that. So again, like hatch marks. If I'm getting rid of too much of my white, which I think I am maybe, I can also then make those white marks, both stippling and hatching, with my eraser. So again, that uneven edge there will help you create that like just fading out, so you don't want to have kind of a hard edge. So if it's getting all of your white is getting eaten up, you may have to go back in and really kind of erase a whole area and then go back and do more of that. So I might be erasing in a little further. So again, I am hatching and stippling with my eraser as needed. So not just a hard line there. So again, we're making those kind of curving marks, side to side curve. So I'm stippling now, trying to get that smooth transition. Okay. And as I keep working on this, as I move to other parts of the drawing, I need to make sure that I use this underneath my hand so I don't undo all of that. All right, so now I'm sitting back. I'm looking at the whole drawing. I'm asking myself, what does it need? So I've got a lot of these open spaces in the negative space. I'm going to be adding some more of this very light shading. I'm going to, I think, go with my original plan of going from kind of the dark to the medium, maybe the medium light, and then back up to dark again. I also want to make sure that this shadow looks like it's lying down. So I can use my eraser to work on these edges. Maybe yours needs the same, so I'm making these small hatching marks side to side, just completely flat. These ones don't curve because the table isn't curving. Those side to side marks. So very smooth, very controlled, but those side to side marks will help create that feeling that the table is actually flat and lying down. So if you need to make your shadow darker, maybe you're doing that with your pencil. So in some of these areas, maybe I want to do that with my pencil a little bit more. So I've got this real medium shadow here versus my dark shadow on my cylinder. And I'm going with that mostly because of my reference. In my reference, it has a fairly light shadow on the table. So medium. So in our value scale, oops, I lost my reference over here. So I hope you guys have your own reference up because I didn't have it up. So, you know, maybe this medium value for my shadow here. So the number 3. So making these side-to-side marks with my pencil going over this area. Again, I'm layering my different types of drawing tools, but you can do the whole thing just with your graphite pencils if you want. Okay. So now going into some of these areas here, so I might try actually shading a little bit here. So I could shade, again, I could just use my HB, and I could shade lightly. So I think I'm going to shade along, especially this back area. So very small marks if I'm using my pencil, but side to side, of course. But I could also try using, what if I use a dirty blending tool there? So being very careful not to go over that edge. And I'm still going to touch up this area here. I'm actually shading into this area with my blending tool even. So trying to get that very smooth transition down the edge of the cylinder. Transitioning to my light HB pencil, maybe even 2H. We've got 2H in the back. Just be careful with those. If you press hard, if you press too hard with them, you'll get sort of grooves in your paper because they are very, very hard. So again, I can continue to blend with this. If I need to get it dirty, I could actually blend up here a little bit, or if I don't want to blend up there, I've got my little bit of shading I did there. I could refresh that, refresh my blending drawing tool. And again, if it comes out too dark, I might erase that little area where it was too dark. Probably safest to make sure that our marks are side to side. So I think that one was a little bit of at an angle. All right, so another area I might want to shade a little bit with this might be down here, where we had the table a little bit darker. So do make sure that you've got your reference. Mine is up on the screen as I work. Just isn't always within the camera range. And I think I want to add a little bit of side-to-side blending, or I should say shading, over here too with my light pencil. So if I want to have that come right up to the edge, I would switch the direction. Now in the picture you do see sort of these lines of the table. These are orthogonal lines essentially. That's going to be a lot trickier. You really have to execute that with a lot of precision to make that work. So I do not recommend doing that as an Art 1 student. If you really feel like, hey, I'm up for that challenge, I'm a very advanced Art 1 student, then I won't necessarily stop you, but it's going to be a challenge. So if you're wondering why I'm not doing that, even though I see it in the reference, that's why. All right, I'm going to be adding some of this same type of light shading in the background over here. So I can have that next to my cylinder. Maybe I'm going a little bit horizontal there and then switching over. So I'm turning my paper so that I'm not drawing as much, don't have my hand as much on an area that's shaded. So, and I'm going to have these be sort of uneven areas. I'm going to bring this down a little bit so you can see. Still may not be able to see. In here really, really lightly, I've got my shading, and here's the edge. It's kind of going like this with lines. So purposely uneven edge. I'm going to extend this area out and have this be sort of uneven as I go. I don't have an exact formula for this, but just kind of what do I think it should look like. So as I do this, I'm going to be sitting back and looking to see the effect. Alright, so I would probably then add some more shading over here, add some more shading here, make sure my shading here is working and side to side. I don't want to have a white area that's kind of a line between these, so I am making sure to get right up to that edge, but I'm doing it really carefully. If I smudge the edge, I can get it to be more precise again with my pencil, and then touch up as needed with my eraser. Make sure that I'm not just adding an outline. Maybe I want to use my pencil as I get close to this. And just switch directions, maybe even a 2H pencil, really, really light. So, but I'm going to, again, create this kind of uneven area out here with some of that very light shading. So I'm going to be able to do some of that off camera. As I'm sitting back and looking, I'm sort of touching up places that look a little off to me. I felt like I needed a little bit more of this side-to-side shading. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on this area up here. So I'm going to create kind of gradation from darker to medium. So I'm going to first put down this shading. I had a little pencil eraser thing there, so that made a little mark, so I'm going to get rid of that a little bit. And I'm going to continue adding shading up here with a darker pencil and making sure that I connect these areas where I've got maybe some darker shading around this, making sure I extend this out enough that it doesn't look odd. And most of this area is going to use a side-to-side mark. So that would be consistent with this table edge. And again, you don't have to use that graphite stick if you don't like how the texture looks with that, because it does have its own texture. I've also seen some people use graphite powder to get a large area very smooth, but that can definitely be a big mess. In fact, I have not seen students, even at higher levels, find success with that. So, just kind of connecting all these areas, making sure that this is transitioning smoothly. And so I'll take a pause from this because I can do some of this off camera now that you kind of get the idea. I don't have an exact measurement for how big this has to be where I'm connecting, but it needs to be gradual, so it needs to be big enough to be gradual. So then I can also use my dark pencil, so maybe even my 6B, and gotta get this on camera. There we go. Shading at the top and shading down. If you want to, this might be a good area to try some charcoal. So again, this is my soft, circular willow charcoal. It's not a black, dark compressed charcoal. If you use your black charcoal, it won't match the same tone. So see how closely when I did these match. This is my charcoal, that's my graphite. If I use the wrong charcoal, so this is my really black, dark one, see how that black doesn't match? Well, you may not be able to see on camera, but in person, I'll tell you, it looks very different, it looks weird, they do not look good together. Like if you are getting dressed and your blacks don't match, it looks odd. So the charcoal, though, will match. This lighter willow charcoal will match pretty well. So if you want to, you could use this. So using some more of this dark up here so that I get that full range of value. We also do have some 4B graphite sticks, so you could try, I think maybe even some 6B. So you could try finding some of those too to make this area a little bit darker. I'm just overlapping the charcoal and pressing harder on this 2B one. And again, you could just do this with careful, small marks using your 6B or 4B or ebony pencil. Oh, that's one I haven't used in this demo, is my ebony pencil. So maybe we'll use that a little bit. So as you're getting up to an edge like this, make sure you're really, really careful, or switch to a pencil. And if you do smudge it, I'm using my eraser. So I can also try out, for my demo, I can try out my ebony pencil. So another, and this actually has like a bigger point to it, so you can get more of that kind of shading with the side of the pencil thing that it's a little bit harder to get with the smaller pencils. So this one might be a great way to go, especially if you are not a big fan of using the charcoal or the graphite stick because of the different texture, because of the messiness. The ebony is really, really great for that. So I'll have to make sure to say that in class earlier, since I didn't use it in the video earlier. All right, so I'm going to now do a bunch of this off camera and then just come back at the very end for the revision step and for the very final details. So this is where we are right now. For our final details, we will be adding some of these lines. Do not do that except with the video. Wait for the video for that.